She'll like, please. I mean, she'll literally do this and like do
Mm.
that whole please act routine, whatever. And I purposely do everything I can to look away, and she'll purposely do everything, and then she will do everything she can to try to be make sure I'm within eyesight of her, so she sees me. Whatever. I give up. So in regards to that, she doesn't do it all the time, but when she does, game over. Never mind.
Allow me to segue real quick. This is off
Yeah.
tangent, but this whole conversation about you and your daughter and you looking away and her being feisty in terms of being persistent
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
creative. It reminds me of what I wanted to talk about with my anak the other day about him being a fencing guy
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
sad situation with sports and how they're being. But I was talking to the mother of my anak the other night,
Mm-hmm.
last night actually, not the other night, last night, about their fencing situation, the coach's situation, and in general, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you might build that that. So the guy is winning; he's pretty good, right?
Right. Right.
And there was this comment about him being like number 6 out of like 45 competitors or something like
In
that.
the country.
I don't know. I can't
Oh.
say. Let's say
Okay.
just in
Okay.
this league. So the
Yeah.
point being that he's number 6, but the idea is that if he has better training, more support, yada yada yada, he would be like number 1 or number 2. So number 6 because of like raw talent.
Mm.
Okay, and this will circle back to your daughter's persistence. I'm curious what you think. For males, at least for guys,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that you can build? And what the coach says, I'll tell you the answer right away. Is that the coach needs to sort of build up that ego for that fighting spirit. Versus, I mean, I say there's no fighting spirit in this guy sometimes because it's like, yeah, because my opponent is like this, or because my there's like always excuses.
Right. Right.
What I'm trying to tell the guy is, you got to find a way to figure it out and not just be creating all these excuses. But I'm curious what you think, being a guy and all. Is that something that you cultivate from within, if the kid has it or not, which is what the coaches are also saying. Like, we want to
Right.
have kids that are already talented and already have that fighting spirit, and not have to like fan the flames and have to build it up. What's
You
your
always okay. So I'm actually going through this right now, specifically with my older daughter, because I'm in a
softball?
way yeah, with softball. I'm in a way
Mm,
kind of helping her out and training her
mm,
to get a much better. Because I did play baseball. I have experience with it. I kind of know a little bit of what I'm talking about. At least I'd like to think so.
mm.
Building their ego or their confidence is very important, especially in sport. But
I think that's what sports is all about.
it's a dangerous level though. If you do it too much,
Right.
then there's a difference between having an ego and just being plain know it all, or I don't know what I'm talking, what that
The
word that I'm looking
coach
for.
actually says you got to build it up in such a way that it's healthy, but not too much that he becomes cocky.
That's what it is. Yes, yes. It's a dangerous level, and it's a thin line. You know
But how?
that depends on how each kid, how you project it, and how each kid takes it. Also, teaching kids nowadays is a lot different with their confidence. It's so much more different than teaching kids with their confidence back then. You know, how is it different? Well, one thing, we live in a generation where the kids nowadays pretty much have the idea that they know all of it already. You know, is it too much? Is it too little? It all depends on how you approach it. Unfortunately, nowadays, I believe let me go back real quick. I apologize. This might take a little too long. I've also coached basketball before. Okay,
Mm,
about
mm,
10 years ago. The most recent one, I coached basketball 5 years ago. The difference in the coaching style is significant. Back then, you can talk directly to a kid, and I mean, not to a kid, you can coach your team in the certain things that you want them to learn, and they automatically think of it and try to look at it in a positive way that's going to better them.
How is it now?
Now, most kids will think, "Oh, I already know that." Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I
You,
know, I know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah,
You try to tell them something, even though that they might not know it already. You have to indirectly tell them that, well, you know what, you don't know everything yet. You know, you have to
right.
understand it from different aspect. But most kids nowadays will think like, oh, I already know that. I already do that. You might, but you might be doing it wrong. That's my point. Nowadays, you have to directly tell the kids, listen, you're doing it wrong.
Mm.
You can't do it that way. You have to look at it from both sides, yada yada yada. Look at it
You
this way, so
you
forth and so
have to
forth.
be direct, or you
You
can't
have
be
to.
direct.
No, you have to. But in a way that that's not going to hurt their egos or their emotions or feelings,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Then that's the hard part, you know. And then kids nowadays, one of the biggest things as well with kids nowadays, the lack of the lack of self I guess priority when it comes to sports. They try to compare themselves too much to every other kid out there.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. But you can't base your own improvement on that. You have to know your own limits first, what you can and cannot do, the way you
Hmm.
understand the sport, yada, yada, yada. Worry about you first before everybody else. That's my thing when it comes
Yeah.
to sports, so that you can get better.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to tell the mom too. I don't know if I'm in the right place to do this, but we're friends, and I just thought I'd give my 2 cents. And I
Mm-hmm.
said,
Mm-hmm.
like our my inaanak is parang he's like so focused on all other factors aside from himself.
Right.
Like, oh, I know what I'm doing, but everybody else is like this, everybody else is like that. They're doing this, and then he sort of bases his performance whether the opponent is good or bad. I'm trying to I'm trying to say, like, no, you gotta like focus on yourself. Don't worry
Mm.
about the
Mm-hmm.
other person's performance, and you don't and because if you adjust your performance based on your opponent, then your opponent is controlling your game. You
Right.
gotta play your own game.
Right. Right. Right.
So I thought I would circle this back to your daughter's bringing up your daughter's persistence kind of thing. If the kid is not persistent or doesn't have that fighting spirit,
Mm-hmm.
do you just say, oh my, you just learn swimming or do another sport?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
I'd like to tell my kid, I'd like to give my kids the opportunity to be able to try whatever sport that they want to try. You know,
mm,
but at the same time, I have to be real with them, just knowing their mechanics and whatnot. That they won't be able. I don't think you're gonna be able to do it. It's going to be hard for you. You know, example again. I'm not gonna mention which kid wanted to eventually had the idea of like ice skating in their head, but the balance of the kid is just horrifying. I know that
right.
they're gonna hurt themselves, and sometimes you gotta like just let them know in a proper way that, hey, listen, this might not work for you.
Mm-mm. Now
The
this one's
difference with that as
opposite.
well is
It's
which
funny.
ones.
This one's my inak's a little opposite in a sense that he's got the natural talent. Again, number 6 out of 40 something players,
Mm.
whether in the league or over all over the Philippines. Here's a Let me just drop this truth bomb at you, and then we can move on from here.
Yeah,
Philippine team. Okay. Guess how many times they train for, well, I don't know if there's any other training, but let's say, as far as I understand, let's say strength and, is it
strength
strength?
training
No,
and
S and
cardio.
C. Yeah, yeah, strength and cardio. Strength and
Mm.
there's another word for cardio, but basically the stamina.
Mm.
Guess how many
Mm-hmm.
times they train for that during the week?
7,
Should be right, maybe 5 times a week,
maybe 5 days. Yeah.
or at least 3. Last I heard, if I
Mm-hmm.
understood the mom right, like 2 times a week. Like,
No, that's not gonna work.
kulang. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
kulang.
it's just frustrating in a sense. And then there was also this philosophy about, if they do it too much, they might burn out. If they, you
Yeah,
know what I mean. So it's this whole balance of whether it's physical or mental, meaning talking about the ego and persistence and building up that fighting spirit, that warrior spirit.
right
It
there.
just
You nailed it
it's
on the head right there. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but you nailed it right on the head. It's
what is
because
it?
of like how kids believe that they can do this and that already. You know what I mean? That they're good at it already. The cockiness and the ego.
Actually, what I'm bringing up here is I don't know if it's actually coming from, is it the kid's fault? Is it the parents? Or is it the coach's fault?
Well, see, that's the thing, though. Sometimes we want to help our kids as much as we can, but sometimes the kid thinks like, "Oh, I already know that. Why am I doing it? It's a waste of time." They don't exactly understand that the repetition is what makes it better. You know, like for
Where,
example, with
yeah.
what I've always made it clear to my kids. I'll help you in any way possible, but you need to have the response the be responsible about it as well. And
I like to use the
you
word
come
initiative.
initiative
Yeah.
and responsible. That's what I'm at. You take the initiative about it, and I'm not gonna go chase after you to go practice. You come get me. You know what I mean? So I've made that clear to my daughter. My daughter's been playing softball for years now, right? And
Mm.
before, I've also told her, if you want to practice more, you just gotta let me. You gotta come get me. Let me know. Take the initiative. Remember things. You know what I mean?
What about
It's
burnout?
because
Is that
it's
something to be worried about?
of course you have to look at it. I mean, as a coach or a trainer or a parent, that's all your responsibility to make sure your kid doesn't burn out. You got to tell them that. You know, you got to put a
Yeah.
limit on it
Yeah. Come to think of it, you can't like decide ahead of time if the kid is going to burn out or not, right? You have to
because
like
you won't
test the
know.
water. You have to test the water, see if the kid's willing to do it. If he's willing to do
Right.
it, go for it. If
Right.
he's not, then okay, he'll probably burn out.
Right. I do have
Am
to
I?
give credit to my daughter though that she has been taking the initiative to come get me a lot more um, and practice. Like for the past 2 weeks, we've been
Mm-mm.
practicing 4 or 5 times a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I take if she comes get me, I take the time obviously to help her out and try to teach her as much as I can. Um, and then from then on, after that, obviously, while we're doing this, I'm just gonna keep an eye on it to see if we don't make sure she doesn't burn out.
Yeah, I think that's the role of the coach, right? Or and the
Right.
parents also to know your kid, but at the same time, like let them do their thing, but and then know when to back off slash know when to push.
And it's also harder because the kids, for some reason nowadays, just don't listen to their elders, especially, or at least the parents directly.
Why
You
not?
know what I mean?
Is
I
it
don't
the
know.
phone?
Maybe it's an authority thing because they can challenge their parents. Do you see what I'm saying?
Is
Our
it because they
children
can
will.
just easily Google things? Or maybe that's the
No,
thing. There's
I,
this
I'm talking about the
idea.
listening aspect. Listening aspect, for example.
Yeah,
Like for
that's
example,
what I'm saying.
yeah, I tell them something I'll tell her like, hey, you need to make sure to stretch and whatnot. You know,
Mm,
every day after practice or whatnot, you got to stretch your muscles because
I know.
it's
I know.
eventually gonna get. Yeah, I know, I do. I even though I know they don't or she doesn't.
Uh, uh,
Um, but I know for a fact that if maybe she hears it from the coach, she's probably gonna do it.
but why
You
do
know what
you
I
think
mean?
they're not? You know what I was thinking? I was joking about it being Googleable and they could just there's this thing about there's this thing that kids don't know about
Mm.
actually knowing it in your head
And
versus
doing it.
actually doing it in real life. I think that's where
Correct.
the cockiness or the I know it all comes from.
Well, no, there's two different things because in our days, when we watch something like a video, for example, of somebody playing basketball or baseball, when we watch, we try to learn from it, right? We try to imitate what they do to see, oh, that's how it's supposed to be done. But nowadays, when kids watch something on video, they automatically think they know what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, why where does that come from?
I don't know. I mean, it's just Chris, I mean, what's his name? Dave Chappelle said it very, very clear.
Mm.
Kids nowadays believe they know everything, and are so unoriginal with their emotions as well, because how can they if everything is available for them already? It happens so many times, they get to see it so many times that it's right there. They automatically think that they know it.
Or is it also the snowflake mentality where it's like, oh, you're a special child, don't worry about it. You'll
No,
figure it
I don't think so. I
because
don't
they're
think
being
so.
babied. No, no, it's really just the availability of things.
It could be as well. I don't know. It all depends. Well, then again, not everybody has the same
Or
situation where they're able to have the proper equipment, the proper,
maybe it's the idea that, yeah, my mom knows or my coach knows, but I also can Google it. So there's this loss of respect because before, no cell phones, no internet,
Mm,
you kind of have this idea it's automatic respect because the fact that my coach or my parent knows a little more than I do, and there's no other way for me to figure things out on my own. I have
mhm.
to bow down to whatever it is that they say because I don't really have a choice. But now I can listen to what the adult says or even what the government says, but I can also do my own research, and that kind of evens things out.
Yeah, I guess it could come down to that. It could come out to that as well. But I think it's just the general generational understanding of things. It's just different now, like you said. Um, there's a difference between knowing it by watching and knowing it by actually experiencing it. You know,
Yeah.
just like
So that's
driving. For example, another example, just to cap it off, just like driving. I've
mhm,
experienced this both with my kids.
mhm,
They really thought that before they even started driving back then, they thought that, oh yeah, it's gonna be easy to drive, you know.
mm.
And then when they get behind the wheel, they get all shaky and don't know what to do. Yeah. It's the
From
same thing. It's
driving,
no
I'll cap it off with diving. The only way that you get better with diving or even swimming is by diving or swimming.
or
You
swimming,
can't like
right?
get better at it by reading more swimming or diving books. I mean, you have a better appreciation for the sport,
Right, right.
but you don't get better at it by if you don't do it. Yun lang.
Yun lang, yun lang. So